The Institute is a framework for helping faculty identify areas for improvement in their teaching practices using data on retention and success that are broken down by different criteria.
And see what's working and not working specifically for certain groups within your classroom.
For example, different age groups, different ethnicities.
So I can look at the data that I get to see if students in different demographic groups or in classes that are held under different conditions have different rates of retention and success.
And trying to piece together the timeline where when activities happen and when students drop off, or activities are happening and certain demographic groups are not succeeding.
And that lets me then consider whether there are ways I could try to improve my practices so I could meet the needs of the students who aren't finding that success.
The Institute is a collaborative effort between faculty, administration, and the research and planning office. So you get to have data for your specific classes.
But by getting that deeper dive into the data, it lets me see patterns I wouldn't have noticed if just by looking at my gradebook.
The Institute really encourages faculty to ask hard questions about, okay, well, why is the data the way it is? Why are some students doing well and why are some groups of students not doing well? And then using that to create a plan to address those gaps.
It also gives me a framework to talk about what I find with my colleagues and to see what issues they might have found and what kind of approaches they're taking to solve those issues.
When I started it, I knew, okay, I think this will help me make changes to my teaching, but I also knew there were some huge blind spots. I had been trying to make some changes or address things before, but I just didn't have the data to really look at where I needed to focus that energy. The purpose of it isn't just to report out. It's a lot more specific. So you're getting a chance to really look at trends within your classes. So which group of students is succeeding and which group is not, rather than just, 70% of my students passed, so I'm doing okay.
We faculty are somewhat limited in our ability to gather data that allows us to identify achievement gaps in certain areas, like along racial or ethnic or student characteristic lines. By having research and planning use the existing student demographic data that they've gathered, we get around those barriers and we have a chance to look at the real data, which then kind of almost lets you see your class from the outside.
We sometimes fail to see disturbing trends where one group of students may be disadvantaged and struggling in your classroom.
Now I know that there's a bit more I can do to reach certain students, and it doesn't take much.
This allowed me to take a step back and say, okay, these great policies that I have, are they truly working for everyone?
Obviously my syllabus to literally the stuff that's on the walls, all sorts of stuff. And so I feel like kind of approaching everything anew. And this is after teaching for like 19 years.
The changes that I'm making is to make the interventions much more disruptive in that students are unable to avoid accessing the resource several times.
Not just in my classroom, such as tutoring services, but all those resources available to students outside of the classroom.
I want to make accessing those resources a habit for all students, not just for students who are struggling from the very beginning of the semester.
I would love to do this every 2 or 3 years, to do a new look at the data and see, are the gaps closing? Are they opening? How are they shifting, and what changes do I need to continue to make?
Encouraging that reflection process is something that this institute has really done for me, and I think that will become a major part of my long-term practice.
And a lot of these strategies I plan to pass down to my adjunct and my part-time faculty in order to kind of spread this through our entire program.
I think about how much time I have spent agonizing over students who are not doing well in my class. I'm thinking about them constantly. I'm emailing them. I'm calling them. I'm writing notes to myself to remind myself in class to ask them again, hey, have you done that assignment? A lot of the work in this institute is to help prevent those types of situations.
Why not request data for your classes over the last 3 years and spend a couple hours just understanding it? And from the data, draw your own conclusions.
The Institute is one of the best experiences I've had so far for helping me to see what assumptions I've been making, what my culture says about what a student should be and what a student should do, and how that might impact students who aren't that much like me, but are no less worthy of being encouraged to succeed than I was.
If every professor is looking at their data and saying, there's a gap there I didn't see before, how can I fill that gap? That makes the classroom experience better. That raises the success rates for students across the board. I think that's going to benefit Palomar and professors and students. It's kind of a win-win. I'm not sure what the downside is, other than a couple hours for professors to look at that data. But we're already having those conversations and discussions either internally in our heads or externally with colleagues.
We're here to support each other so that we can benefit our students. That's why we're here. That's the whole point.